Ayden Bell stood in the center of the grand stage, his hands clutching his white cane, his cloudy eyes unseeing but alert to every sound, every shift in the air. The lights above gleamed like stars, their brilliance meant to guide the great and the famous. But none of that mattered to him. The audience, a sea of tuxedos and glittering gowns, could hardly see the boy in the simple black dress. They saw a blind black boy, an outsider, someone who had no place on this stage, certainly not among these polished giants. And then before he could even take his first step toward the piano, a voice sliced through the air. "Get her off the stage. She's blind. She's black. She's going to ruin the Steinway." The words came from Nathaniel Royce, a legendary pianist whose name was synonymous with perfection in the classical world. His gaze was sharp, cold, as he stared down at Ayden, dismissing him as nothing more than a distraction. That insult hurled at him in front of hundreds was meant to break him. It was designed to crush his spirit, to make him feel smaller than the shadows cast on the stage. But Ayden didn't shrink. He didn't flinch. He stood tall, unwavering, as if every word was just another sound in the symphony of his life, a sound he had learned to ignore. With slow, deliberate steps, Ayden walked to the piano. His fingers, trembling slightly from the weight of the moment, hovered over the keys. The audience waited, expecting a train wreck, a failure. But as Ayden's fingers touched the keys, something extraordinary happened. The music he played wasn't loud or grandiose. It wasn't meant to impress. It was a quiet, powerful force, a sound that spoke of something deeper than technique, something beyond perfection. As the first notes rang out, the world seemed to hold its breath. In that moment, the music wasn't just a series of notes, it was Ayden's story. The story of a boy who had been rejected, discarded, and dismissed, yet had found a voice in the one thing the world couldn't silence: his music. The audience, once skeptical, was stunned into silence. No one had expected this. No one could have. Ayden's journey to this stage had not been an easy one. His story didn't begin in grand halls or prestigious classrooms. It began in the dimly lit corners of the Eastbrook Conservatory, a place that prized pedigree and prestige above all else. He had arrived there through a humanitarian program, a charity initiative that allowed students from disadvantaged backgrounds to attend, but only as shadows. Ayden, black and blind from birth, was never truly seen by those around him. From the very first day he learned that at Eastbrook there was no place for someone like him. The other students, children of the wealthy and the powerful, would never acknowledge him. They would never greet him or offer him a chance. He was not allowed to join the official classes, nor could he participate in performances. His existence at Eastbrook was one of quiet exclusion. Ayden was forced to learn by listening from the outside doors of classrooms, sitting silently in the halls as the sounds of perfect music floated through the air just out of his reach. The piano keys, the notes played by others, were like distant whispers that teased him, promising something he could never touch. But Ayden did not give up. He developed his understanding of music through vibration, through the subtle shifts in sound that others might ignore. He memorized the rhythm of the footsteps in the hallways, the tapping of the teacher's hand on the chalkboard, the vibrations of the piano as others played. Every sound became a lesson, and every silence a moment of learning. He began to build his own world of music, one that didn't rely on sight, but on feeling, on listening deeply with the soul. His isolation at Eastbrook was not just a physical one, but an emotional one too. Ayden was treated as invisible, a ghost in the halls, ignored and avoided by the very people who should have been his peers. But in that silence, Ayden found strength. Music was the language that could never be taken from him, and so he listened. He listened until the world could no longer ignore him. One night, as Ayden sat in the empty corridor near room 2B, the door slightly ajar, he was once again listening to the distant sounds of a class in progress. The students were practicing harmonic analysis, their fingers gliding over the piano keys, while Ayden sat in the shadows, his ears straining to catch the patterns, the rhythm of their play. This was how he learned, by feeling the music in the air. It was then that Professor Harold McCain, the retired and respected music professor, happened upon him. The professor had never noticed Ayden before. He had heard about the boy, the one who never spoke, never made himself known. But this night, something was different. As he stood in the hallway watching Ayden with quiet curiosity, he saw something no one else had seen. Ayden's hands hovered in the air, mimicking the piano keys, his fingers tracing the notes that were not written down, that were not part of any formal curriculum. McCain, who had spent decades teaching the greats, recognized the raw potential in Ayden. He saw a student who didn't need textbooks or formal instruction, a student who could hear music in ways no one else could. It was in that moment that McCain made a decision he would become Ayden's mentor. But it wouldn't be through traditional lessons. There would be no sheet music, no formal instruction. McCain would teach Ayden with touch, with rhythm, and with stories, helping him to understand music not as something to be perfected, but as something to be lived. This was the beginning of their unlikely relationship. It was not a mentorship built on formalities, but one born out of mutual respect and a shared love for music. McCain began to teach Ayden in the quiet moments when no one else was watching. He taught him not just about technique, but about the emotional power of music, the way it could transcend barriers, the way it could speak for the unspeakable. Through McCain, Ayden would come to understand that music was not just about playing notes, it was about telling stories, expressing truths, and connecting with others in a way that words could not. Ayden didn't play music to impress. He didn't play to win accolades or perform for an audience. His music was not about perfection, it was about survival. Music was the one thing that had never betrayed him. It was the one language that allowed him to express the things he could not say with words. It was his only voice in a world that had rejected him. Professor McCain understood this. He recognized that Ayden's music was born not out of the desire to perform, but out of a need to survive. Every note Ayden played was a statement, a way for him to say, "I am here." It was his way of fighting back against a world that had ignored him, against the prejudice and discrimination he faced every day. His music was not about showing off, it was about speaking his truth. McCain taught Ayden to express his emotions through his music, to channel his pain, his anger, and his hope into every note. He taught him that music was not about following the rules, it was about feeling the music in your body, letting it resonate deep within you, and sharing that feeling with the world. Ayden learned to tell stories through his music, stories of survival, of resilience, and of the deep emotional currents that flowed through his soul. His music became his autobiography, his way of making the world listen to him when no one else would. For Ayden, playing the piano was not about playing the right notes, it was about playing from the heart, letting the music come from the deepest parts of himself. And with every piece he played, he began to tell a story that no one had ever heard before. A story of a boy who had been told he was nothing, yet had found everything in the music that flowed from his soul. McCain knew that Ayden's talent could not be ignored. He decided to submit Ayden's audition to a prestigious music showcase, an event that could open doors for the young boy. But he did not submit a traditional audition. There was no elaborate performance, no grand introduction. He submitted only an audio file of Ayden's music, just raw, unpolished, and filled with emotion. Ayden was scheduled to audition in a small, insignificant room at 7:45 in the morning. It was clear that this was not an opportunity to showcase his talent, but rather to put him in a place where his success could be easily dismissed. Ayden arrived early, his heart racing, but not out of fear. He was used to being overlooked, to being ignored. But this time he was determined to play not for them, but for himself. When the time came for his audition, Ayden sat at the piano and played. The notes that came from his hands were hauntingly beautiful, raw with emotion, but full of a quiet power. He played not for the audience, but for the music itself, letting the melody carry him to places that words could never reach. But despite the beauty of his performance, despite the emotion that resonated through every note, Ayden was rejected. There was no feedback, no encouragement, just a simple, impersonal rejection. But this rejection did not break Ayden. Instead, it sparked something inside him. It sparked a movement that would change the way the world viewed music and the way the world would listen to him. In the quiet halls of Eastbrook Conservatory, there was someone who saw the world differently. Mr. Richard the janitor had always been an observer, one of the few people who wasn't caught up in the pursuit of accolades or perfection. He had seen Ayden Bell many times, not as a student, but as someone who silently moved through the halls, a presence almost unnoticed by most. But not by him. Mr. Richard had witnessed the rejection, the whispers, and the quiet strength that emanated from Ayden. One fateful day, as Ayden played his hauntingly beautiful piece in that small, unnoticed room where the audition had taken place, Mr. Richard couldn't just walk away. He felt the raw emotion in every note, the story that Ayden was telling without words. So he did something that no one else would have thought of. He pulled out his old battered phone and quietly recorded the final moments of Ayden's performance. He wasn't trying to make a statement. He was simply trying to capture the truth of the music that no one else seemed to notice. The sound, though slightly muffled and imperfect, spoke volumes. Once the video was recorded, Mr. Richard uploaded it to a small niche forum for music lovers. It wasn't a big platform, just a place for enthusiasts to share hidden gems. At first, the video barely garnered attention, a handful of views here and there. But something about Ayden's music, something unnameable, began to resonate with people. Slowly, it spread quietly at first, but then virally. Musicians from all over the world, critics who had once dismissed him, started to watch the video. They shared it with friends, posted it on social media, and commented on its raw, emotional depth. What started as a forgotten audition turned into a global sensation. Ayden was no longer invisible. His music reached people, stirring emotions and challenging perceptions. People began to ask, "Who is this boy? Why haven't we heard of him before?" From a janitor's simple recording, Ayden Bell's name began to echo through the world, and with it came the realization that music, real music, isn't about fame. It's about the truth it carries. The video of Ayden playing in that small room became more than just a viral sensation, it sparked a revolution. It wasn't just the music that captivated listeners. It was the message that Ayden's performance carried, the story of a young boy who had been rejected, who had been overlooked, yet had played from his soul with a sincerity that shook the foundations of the music world. Artists, influencers, and music institutions began to question why they had never recognized Ayden's talent. Who is Ayden Bell? They asked, their curiosity piqued by his raw, emotional performance. As the video spread, so did the criticism of Eastbrook Conservatory's elitist practices. The school, once celebrated for its prestigious reputation, was now under fire. People began to question why such talent had been rejected, why a boy who could make a piano sing was treated as invisible. Many called out the system for its blind spots, its refusal to see beyond pedigree and tradition. The outrage grew louder as the story of Ayden's rejection continued to circulate, forcing Eastbrook to confront its own hypocrisy. In the midst of the uproar, an unexpected invitation arrived. The International Gala, a prestigious music event known for its high-profile performances, contacted Ayden. They wanted him to open their event to perform before an audience that included some of the most influential figures in the music world. The organizers were aware of the viral sensation that Ayden had become, but they also understood that inviting him wasn't just about his talent, it was about recognizing the importance of what he represented. Ayden wasn't just a performer, he was a symbol of something far bigger than himself, something the world had been blind to for far too long. The night of the International Gala rehearsal was filled with anticipation. Ayden entered the grand hall with no fanfare, no entourage, and no stage-managed performance. He wasn't there to impress or to conform to the rigid expectations of classical music. Instead, he was there to share a part of himself, to speak through the piano, in a language that transcended technique. As the orchestra played their parts and the technicians set the stage, Ayden sat at the piano. His fingers, which had once hovered in isolation, now found the keys with certainty. What followed wasn't a show of polished perfection. It was raw, it was real, and it was a direct confrontation with the very system that had tried to silence him. Ayden's piece was unlike anything the crew had expected. It wasn't designed to fit into the strict boundaries of classical music. It was a creation of his own, a reflection of everything he had experienced, every moment of rejection, every silent battle fought in the shadows of Eastbrook Conservatory. Royce, who had arrived with a sense of superiority, was watching from the sidelines. As Ayden's music filled the room, something inside him shifted. It wasn't just a performance, it was a reckoning. Royce, the man who had once dismissed Ayden as unworthy, now found himself paralyzed. He wasn't hearing just a boy playing music. He was hearing a truth that had long been buried under the polished performances he had become known for. The entire crew fell silent as Ayden played. Even the technicians stopped what they were doing, unable to move, to adjust, to interfere. They were witnessing something profound, a moment when music wasn't just about technical ability. It was about soul, about truth, and about the courage to speak up when no one else would listen. And in that moment, Royce understood he had not been watching a prodigy. He had been watching a revolution. The night of the gala arrived, and Ayden stood backstage preparing to open the event. The spotlight that awaited him was not one he sought out. It was a byproduct of his truth of the world finally listening. As he walked onto the stage barefoot, the audience fell into a hush. They didn't know what to expect, but they were about to experience something far beyond the constraints of traditional performance. Ayden didn't need a grand introduction. He didn't need to announce his presence with fanfare or elaborate gestures. He simply sat at the Steinway and with a quiet yet determined breath began to play. His hands moved effortlessly, but it wasn't perfection that he sought. His music was not about impressing the elite or showing his technical prowess. It was about telling a story, his story, the story of rejection, of survival, and of the unspoken pain that had carried him this far. As the first notes rang out, the audience listened, really listened for the first time. No one clapped out of politeness. They didn't rise because they were impressed by his skill. They stood because they recognized the gravity of the moment. Ayden wasn't just performing. He was offering a piece of himself, a piece of his journey, and the audience understood that they had witnessed something truly remarkable. It was a moment of reverence, of apology, and of recognition. Despite the fame, the offers, and the media attention that followed, Ayden disappeared from the spotlight. He wasn't interested in the fame that others wanted to place on him. To him, the gala was just a beginning, a prelude to something much deeper, much more personal. When a record executive arrived at his door, eager to sign him and offer him the world, Ayden simply shook his head. That was only the prelude, he said, his voice calm but firm. I'm not ready to be printed in the middle. Ayden's journey wasn't about becoming famous. It was about staying true to the music, to the message, and to the truth that he had been sharing all along. With that, he left quietly, carrying only a small suitcase and his mother's wooden flute. He didn't need the world's applause. What mattered to him was the silence that followed the space where his music had already spoken. As Ayden moved away from the public eye, he found another way to connect with the world. Rather than playing on grand stages or signing record deals, he began to respond to the pain of others through music, but not through public performances. Ayden's music became a gift, an offering to those who needed healing, those whose voices had been lost, those who had been invisible. Prisoners, sick children, and elderly people in nursing homes began receiving his handwritten scores. Each composition was unique, tailored to the person's story, their pain, their joy, their silence. And with every piece of music, Ayden left a message. Listen. With the place where language has been forgotten, he wrote at the bottom of every score, a reminder that sometimes music isn't about what's heard, it's about what's felt. Ayden's music became a lifeline for those who thought they had no voice, a reminder that they were not forgotten, that they were still worthy of being heard. He never signed his name, never sought recognition. His music spoke for itself, and in its quiet way it healed. If you were moved by Ayden's incredible story and the power of his music, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring journeys of resilience and truth. Share this video with your friends and family and leave us a comment below to let us know how Ayden's music impacted you. Every note has a story. Let's keep the conversation alive. Join us as we continue to bring you more powerful stories of untold talent and the voices that change the world. Stay tuned for more.